Welcome to This Is How, an ACLU of North Carolina podcast that unlocks the untold stories of justice, freedom, and activism from right here in North Carolina.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm a senior communication strategist with the ACLU of North Carolina. And today we're going to be talking about the relationship between art and activism and exploring one of our most recent projects, a zine anthology aimed at engaging young people in political thought and giving them a space to express their thoughts and opinions. Art has always had a place in activism, whether it's helping us understand what it's like to live another person's life, building empathy for marginalized communities, distilling complicated political ideas, or just conjuring strong emotions. Art is a tool to overcome the rigid power structures that govern our everyday lives. Music, dance, spoken word, literature, drawing, painting, film, photography. These are just a few examples of art forms that can ignite both joy and resistance. At a time when our political system is fraught with ideological differences, misinformation, and unconstitutional grabs for power, it's easy to get discouraged. But the motivation to create art is innately human, and it persists even when things feel hopeless. It's so important that we continue to provide opportunities for young people to create openly and without fear of persecution so that we can build a better future together. Now, I would like to introduce Genna Marshall. She is another one of our senior communication strategists with the ACLU of North Carolina, and she has been running our new project, a zine anthology for young people, and we're going to talk about it. So the zine project, it's called The Future Echoes. To start off, Genna, can you explain what a zine is for folks who don't know?
Yeah, so a zine is short for fanzine or magazine, and it's a typically self-published, self-distributed piece of art. I have ours right here, and pretty much it kind of started in like the 30s and 40s with like the sci-fi genre. So like a bunch of like famous sci-fi authors like started off doing zines because like big publications wouldn't publish their stuff. Same thing as like comic books. So like Superman started off as a zine for like the huge comic book industry like started. And then it resurged in the 60s with like rock and roll. So like people would go to like Beatles concerts and like have like zines because they're fans. And then it resurged again in the 80s and 90s with the punk scene. So like Riot Girl was really, really huge. And people would talk about like stuff that you wouldn't hear on TV or see like, or, you know, on the radio or anything, like reproductive rights or like the AIDS epidemic or like stuff that just people are talking about that no one was talking about broadly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so can you tell us about where the inspiration for the zine anthology came from and why you wanted to engage young people in this way?
Yeah, so I'll go back. So when I was in college, we had a literary magazine, and I was not an art student, and I really wanted to submit. And I was very bad at art. I just couldn't do it. I was super scared.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, well, I never did art, really discouraged. And I really wanted to submit, and I knew I wouldn't be like included in it. And so I know there's a lot of young folks who aren't good at art or don't do art, but have a lot of things to say. And I wanted this to be an avenue for people to talk about the issues and the experiences that they have without feeling like they have to be good at something. And I also know like being on social media and seeing young people like talk about what's going on in the world. And like, I don't feel like there's a lot of avenues for young people to talk about their experiences outside of social media. And I kind of want to get away from that because I think we should return to analog for certain things.
Yeah. How do you see the role of art in activist spaces, in like exactly what you're talking about, in sort of a post-social media landscape? What is the value that art brings into existing activist spaces?
I always say that like art is endemic to like humanity. It's like something that we just do. It's a way of communicating without like talking or like, you know, using our hands or feet or whatever. And I think activism is also endemic. Like that's how we get things done. We come together and we fight for things that we believe in, advocate for things that we believe in. And so I don't think, you know, art is like an end all be all for those spaces, but I think it's a way for people to send a message that may resonate deeper with someone rather than just like shouting out into the void. I think that's obviously very, very helpful. But I think this is kind of like, the ACLU of North Carolina, like we do work, we go into the legislature, we are in court as well. But I think there's a space for art to touch people that won't necessarily like understand or resonate with that other work that we do.
Yeah. I've heard people say before, if you're an artist, you have to make art. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true for me. I'm sure that's true for a lot of artists. But like you've said, I think, young people are still learning about themselves, about the world, about their creative capacity. And I love that this project encourages them to create no matter what. Like, even if they don't feel like they can label themselves as an artist. I think that's really powerful. So when you first started thinking about the project, how did you come up with the first prompt, and what does it mean to you?
So the first prompt was, what does the power of voting mean to you? You can see it here. And you can see the zine at ACLUofNCzines.org. Again, on social media. And we released this first prompt about 3 months before the election. And I mean, people had a lot of strong feelings. People were activated, I will say. And I was seeing a lot of different, a lot of discourse online with young people, especially about the importance of voting, the power of voting. And I thought it could be really interesting to kind of firsthand hear what young people have to say about it. I've been young before. So I've also had my own feelings, and I feel I think there's 1.3 million 15 to 24-year-olds in North Carolina alone. Wow. And their voting power, 18 and up, their voting power is massive. And I think historically we have seen that politicians, people, adults in general have really disengage from young people because they don't think that there's a bunch of different reasons. So I really want this to be an avenue for to kind of showcase that we care about what you have to say. You're our future. And if you don't feel valued now, there's not much we can do to make you feel valued in the future. So I thought that was crazy. So I really want this to, I didn't want to sway anyone. I don't want to be yeah, you have to vote, you don't have to vote, whatever. I just want this to be a place where people can just talk about how they feel.
Yeah, I feel during the election cycle, we talked a lot, both internally at the ACLU and also with our partners, about how to engage young people in the election cycle and encourage them to vote. But a lot of that conversation revolves around how do we communicate to them. And we don't often have opportunities for young people to communicate to us what they are prioritizing, what is important to them, what they value. So I think that this zine has been a great opportunity to see what is on their minds coming into the election and now after the election. How are they feeling? How are they thinking about these things? Which is great. I think that, yeah, it's hard to know how to reach a community if we're not hearing from them. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the future. Is that how you kind of came around to the title for the zine anthology, The Future Echoes?
Yeah, I think young people are our future. I think that's just a fact. Young people are literally our future. So the anthology, I call it an anthropological archive, which is very academic sounding, but pretty much the culture of young people right now, and preserving that culture into the future. We have a toolkit on our website, and in that toolkit I talk about I have the picture of the cave paintings from 7,000 years ago or whatever. And there's that famous one with all the hands on the yeah. And I use that example because we're looking at that 7 years from now, and it's a bunch of hands, right? That if you sold a piece of that painting and go for I don't know, whatever, however, $100 billion or whatever. I think the value that we put on art is self-imposed. And I think that's so interesting because it is anthropological. We look back and those are kids. Our kids are the same. They would do that same thing. And I think it's a great tool to kind of bring us together as humanity. Kind of sounds cheesy, but bridging this gap between like what the future might hold and what the past has already, like what has already happened in the past. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I read an essay once about the Lascaux cave paintings and how they were discovered by accident in the 40s by 4 young men who like stumbled into a cave by accident and found these ancient paintings. And I always love that story. I think that at least 2 of them became tour guides for the Ultimate Museum. So what have the response has been like from the people who have submitted?
It's been very interesting. So for our first prompt, what does the power building mean to you? I would say it's probably how you would expect. There are wide range. There are people who are like, I think voting is really important. There are people who are just like, I don't know if voting is important. There are people who are like, I don't think voting is important. So I'm happy to see that people felt safe enough to kind of share their art with us. And for our last prompt that disclosed, which is crisis, rebuilding, and community, we got a number of responses. And, this is nationwide, so it's not just North Carolina. We, of course, got responses in response to Hurricane Helene that just hit Western North Carolina. Some beautiful written pieces. We've got like people doing like sculptural pieces about the impacts of AI and social media on youth. We got a lot of like short stories about like what it means to persevere. And that was kind of the point of this. Like the prompts are kind of open-ended to a point where we ask people to connect it to ACLU issue areas, but we also want to really see like, how are you feeling? What does this mean to you? What's this bring up to you?
Yeah. Is that kind of in line with what you expected the responses to be like? Or is there anything that has surprised you about it?
I'm just like shook at like how much talent we have. Like it's super cool. I don't think if I was like a 15-year-old, I would feel confident and safe enough to like post my art and have it like be on a website and then potentially like shown to like thousands of people. I'm really impressed, and I'm really happy that there are people who feel safe enough to do that. I was very shocked at seeing like a sculptural piece. I will say that was like, that kind of shook me to my core. Like, wow, I think they're like 16 years old. I was like, whoa, that's really sick. But yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's your goal for the project moving forward?
So like the big goal is to turn these zines into a published book where everyone included will be a published author. But like ultimately, I just want this to be an archive, an anthropological archive. So, maybe in 100 years when someone's writing a essay and they have to go to the library and then they see this, they're like, oh man, that's okay. I'm feeling that too. Like, so I want this to be preserved as scholarship, if you will.
Hoping and praying that public libraries are still a thing in 100 years. God, do we need them? So what do you hope that young people take away from this project? Both the young people who have submitted and the ones who are seeing the zine.
Yeah. I hope they feel that proud about what they're accomplishing. I hope this gives them a feeling of like agency over their own stories. The ACLU of North Carolina, like we're just kind of a vessel for this, or like a catalyst to bring their voices into the world. We do not own this art. This is their art. I think like having this be published is a way to like give that agency, because like you can't take someone's authorship away from them. Like that person's going to be an author now. Like that's crazy. So I really want this to be a way for young people to feel that their voices do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the wonderful things about working for this type of organization is that we have a lot of resources at our disposal that we can share with the community and invite them in to participate in things like this. And then, yeah, we get to spread the wealth of information and money and resources that we have.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Genna. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. I think the Zine Project is such a lovely way of engaging with young people and engaging with our existing supporters and also maybe garnering some new supporters among young people. We definitely want to bring them into the movement and encourage them to engage with us in the future. And I think that this is such a great way of doing that. For young folks who are interested in the project, now that they've heard all about it, how can they submit?
So you can go to our website at ACLUofNCzines.org. There'll be a big submit sign. You can see an archive of previous submissions, and you can see this zine online as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Genna. We encourage all people to create art no matter what. Whether you intend to share it or not, the act of creation is an act of liberation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for joining This Is How, brought to you by the ACLU of North Carolina. If this episode resonates with you, we challenge you to take action. If you go to acluofnorthcarolina.org, you'll find ways to donate and volunteer. Join us on social media as well. And if you like the show, share it with your network, subscribe on YouTube or a podcast app, or give us a rating at ratethispodcast.com/ACLUNC. This episode was edited and produced by Earfluence. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon on This Is How.